peculiar things that people can experience in this world. Where experience anomalies are concerned, the focus of investigations and debates ought to be on the causes, not on the occurrences. It's surely futile by now to argue that all anomalous experiences must bow to conventional explanations. Yet it's also unwise to extrapolate too freely from such experiences, which may not mean all that they appear to mean, in order to invent, with no other justification than a witness's account, an extraordinary phenomenological context in which the reported phenomenon is said to make sense. Anomalies of the highest strangeness dwell in a twilight zone between the daylight of science and reason and the dark night of dreams and superstition. To say that you have seen one is not necessarily to say that the anomaly lives on in the world when it is not briefly occupying your vision and scaring the daylights out of you. We may experience unbelievable things, but our experiences of them may tell us nothing except that they can be experienced. You can see a fairy or a mermaid or something comparably outlandish, but however resonant the experience may be to you, the rest of us cannot infer from your testimony that such creatures are real. In fact, we can be pretty certain they aren't. And that's all we can be sure of, because what we've done here is to remove one explanation from consideration, that such things exist at event-level reality, while failing to put another in its place. Still, in conclusion, this concept of experience anomalies relieves us of the false demands of literalism. We no longer have to argue for the authenticity or inauthenticity of the described phenomena. Not that a profound enigma does not remain, a mystery of imagination, culture, perception, consciousness, being, and more, a mystery so impenetrable that it eludes vocabulary itself, our very sense of the assumed relationship of event to experience. Happily, though, it removes us from the most onerous burden of all. We can now believe our informants without having to believe their explanations. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. It's traditional in our organization that we always have time for questions.
Now I'm in trouble.
Yes, there's one.
Yes, I'd like your take on the subject matter. Are you familiar with the DMT literature?
Not really. I know what you're talking about.
Repeat the question.
Oh, the DMT literature, right? Yeah, am I familiar with it? Very slightly. To the extent that basically I know what you're asking about, and that's about it.
Anomalous and unusual experiences, but that don't seem to make, and they even are partially objective in the sense that people will retain what happened, 3 years ago, and they'll be back in the same place. It's all evolved over the course of 3 years and so on, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of normal objective evidence for them.
Well, that's very interesting. That's something that I'm going to have to look into. I think that experience anomalies occur in all kinds of strange contexts. I was reading Vincent Bugliosi's book on the Kennedy assassination, and one of his chapters is devoted to a really kind of discordant event that doesn't really fit into kind of any kind of ordinary rational understanding of the history around the Kennedy assassination. And it occurred to me that this might be an anomalous event. I mean, an experience anomaly. These things do occur in different contexts, not just ones that are, on their face anomalous. And so I'll look into that.
This is a real microphone. So in your experience anomalies that you describe, it's of an individual who experiences something, but there are also cases that you've described in which multiple individuals experience something. So in that case, that experience anomaly appears to be objective to multiple people. And then finally, there are other events, such as this conference, where everybody in this room is experiencing the same thing. So this is an anomaly that's universally experienced. So at what point do you call something an objective reality? If one person experiences, several, or everybody?
I think that, well, I think it's demonstrably true that experience anomalies can be collectively perceived, but they're generally confined to a small, usually it's one individual, but it can be a small group of individuals at the same time and place. And that's what makes experience anomalies, so extraordinarily strange, is that they're at their core, I think, subjective, but they're tapping into something larger that has a kind of temporary quasi-objectivity. I think that, as I said, we're dealing with something that is probably beyond our vocabulary. It's hard to talk about, but is occurring all the time, all around us.
You have another question?
On DMT, I'll be touching on that briefly in my talk this afternoon. Thanks for bringing that up.
There's one in the back. Okay, well, this one here. Yeah, York.
Since ultimately, with some levels of indirection, everything that we think we know about the world boils down to either our own experiences or the testimony of other people about their experiences and observations, doesn't the idea that multiple people can share an experience that nevertheless is not real somewhat undermine the whole concept of evidence?
Well, yeah, I think that's one of the points I was making, that there are certain that the anomalous event is one for which evidence can be demonstrated and documented. For example, a close encounter of the second kind, or a UFO leaves ground traces, which can be taken into a laboratory and shown to be very strange, maybe suggestive of some unknown technology. But somebody's vivid story of entering an otherworldly realm is only somebody's really vivid sensation. And you can collect all kinds of reports of this otherworldly realm, but you won't find that any two of them are the same. They may have certain features in common. But as I said in the lecture, these claims are just too wildly variant to give us a coherent geography.
Time for one last question.
In the movie What the Bleep, there's a story told about natives that witnessed the arrival of Columbus's ships, and that most of the natives that see this, because it's something so far outside their experience, they actually don't see it at all. It's almost invisible, whereas the shaman of the group, those that are used to seeing the sort of weirdness that goes on, they're the only ones capable of seeing it. Anything at all like that resonate with your talk?
Well, I think that something profoundly strange and far beyond current knowledge is going on with these experience anomalies. But so experience anomalies is not an explanation. That's just a description, a way of thinking about them. And I think that it's clear that whatever the stimulus is, it's filtered through cultural expectation and consciousness. It's like, in some sense, an extraordinary anomaly of consciousness. That's not all it is, but that's how it gets to us.
Well, Jerry, we thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting.